One thing that I found really important in this chapter section that I was really thinking about is embracing the diversity of our participants and their family situations. I know that in many of our communities, at least in my community, I won't be dealing with many people with a lot of ethnic differences, but there will be some cultural differences as I live in an area that has a lot of Hispanic people, and there are a lot of major family culture differences between Caucasian people and Hispanic people. Another thing that I think is really important to be understanding of is that people have different family situations. There are people who live in single parent households, foster households, same sex couple households, and regardless of our views on the validity of that home structure or whatnot, we have to be able to respect them if they're participating in our workshops and to help them learn the skills that they need. So it's a really silly example, but I've been taking this 7-year-old to church with me. And every week in the program lately, it says, fathers and mothers, please help your child prepare for the primary presentation. I'm the one who's preparing this little girl, and I'm not her mother or her father. So this program statement makes me feel kind of alienated, not in a serious way, but we have to be careful to avoid things like that, which I found really important because it's something that's sometimes hard to remember. Another thing I really liked about this section was the idea about leading a discussion and about limit setting and having those boundaries of what you want to talk about. In my family, we'll start talking about the weather and somehow we'll get hypothesizing about what would happen if cows took over China. And I don't really know how that happens, but it does. So when we have guests like the missionaries over or in a classroom when it's mostly populated by us, it gets kind of bad because we'll take the discussion in a totally different way. So it's going to be important for me in my workshop to A, make sure I'm not doing that, and B, make sure that there are those boundaries. I loved the idea of linking, because I know that when I'm in a classroom or a workshop, I often don't pay as close of attention to the other people's comments as I should. But if the teacher or facilitator was like, oh, I really like what you said, Sally. That fits with what Rebecca was saying about blah, 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 blah. I'm more likely to pay attention and to get more out of it because I'm not just learning from myself, which is great. I also think that summarizing is important because even if we try to stay on topic, we're going to in some way veer off track and get lost, and someone's going to be confused. But when we summarize, we can bring everybody back to where they need to be, which is really important. As I was reading the CES manual about teaching the gospel and the reflective questions with that, the thing that I was really thinking a lot about is that you don't have to be teaching the gospel to teach with the Spirit. Teaching with the Spirit should be something we're always doing because everything we do, we should be doing with the Spirit. So it will obviously come into our classrooms if we're living worthy of it and teaching things that are worthy to have there and prepared. Because even if we're not teaching about a gospel principle, we're teaching about good things, good, wholesome, true things. And that will allow the Spirit to be there. Not only just strengthen us as instructors so that we make more sense and are more focused and more cover what we want to, but also to help our participants so that they're able to learn and grow and gain insights from what we're saying, which I think is really important and really special. I was thinking a lot about how important it is to build a relationship with the people you're teaching. And I think one main way we do this is credibility. Not just by seeming that we know what we're talking about, which is very important, but also by seeming like a real person and not just someone who's there to lecture at them, but rather to understand them and to help bring them to understanding. I'm really sorry, it's getting late. But as we do that, we'll be able to help them so that they can grow and that we can too, and that we'll have a better relationship. We also need to speak to the people we're teaching as knowledgeable adults, not as people who don't know anything. Because if someone's speaking to me like a little kid who doesn't know anything, I'm not going to listen to them or ever want to talk to them again. So we need to be careful not to do that. We have to be, one thing I was thinking about is we learned a lot about discussion and how important discussion is. And I completely agree with it that a discussion is important and that we need to invite people to participate. But I think one thing we need to be really cautious of is not forcing people into participating in a discussion. Because if we force people, they're not going to enjoy it. They may not get anything out of it, and they might not want to come back. Because no one likes to be forced to do something that's way outside of their comfort zone. And there are some people that adding to a discussion is just really uncomfortable for them. So we need to be able to meet the needs of all of our participants. Those that need discussion and those that don't want to participate in discussion, but like the idea of listening. I really liked, I know this is a little weird, but I really liked the reflective question about what's something you've noticed in your own teaching that you need to work on. Because as we notice mistakes we've made before, we're better able to not make those mistakes again. I noticed that one thing I have a really hard time with is not waiting for people to finish answering the question before I jump in with the answer or with my thoughts on it. And I really need to work on waiting longer and giving everyone else a chance to participate before I participate, which I think is important. Speaking about discussions, the one last thing I wanted to mention is I really like the idea of the fishbowl topic, where you have two circles and the outer people watch the inner people have a conversation, and then they talk about what they learned, and then you switch so that everyone gets to like learn from the other people's point of view, which I think is amazing. It probably won't work very well for what my topic's on, but I think it would work really well for something like what they used as an example for working with parents to help them understand their children and children to understand their parents. One of the great things I learned about learning all of these tools is I'm able to find which ones I think would work for me and which ones wouldn't really work for me so that I can make my workshop be the best that it can be. I'm really excited to put this learning into action, and it was really great to learn about. And I hope you guys all have a good next couple weeks.